2025 collapse. The disaster America secretly wanted? The catastrophic collapse that America desires has only just begun. When the global stock market crashed, countless people were forced to climb to the rooftop. When the naysayers ask me, when can I catch the bottom? Well, sorry. I've been talking about this scenario for months now. This situation, this crisis, is actually just beginning. You will see that people in the market are currently competing to sell stocks. Right, that means, even if you feel like you've lost a lot of money, even if you think you've dumped your stocks at a low price, it's just your opinion. When the whole world is cutting prices, reducing prices and dumping stocks, you offer 50 dong to sell, but others are willing to sell for only 40 dong. So, in the end, are there more sellers or more buyers like us? In other words, for us, the capitalists, who are preparing to buy at the bottom, the current price is still too expensive, not cheap enough. So when is it cheap enough? Very simply, it is when all things are desolate and lifeless. When people who have never bought stocks, people who think it has nothing to do with them, also lose to the point of despair when all of our assets are almost given away for free. Yes, you heard that right. If you are willing to peel back the layers of this game, you will realize how brutal it is. The end point of this crash is the starting point for us to buy at the bottom. In fact, that's when the financial crisis hit. At that very moment, the wealth that millions of people have worked hard to accumulate all their lives will become the property of the capitalists. That's called a major transfer of wealth. Is that true? Fortune Art welcomes you all. If you have been following my videos, you will have found out that since last year, Warren Buffett has started selling US stocks and keeping huge amounts of cash. At that time, the stock market was still soaring because Trump was re-elected, so countless people laughed at him, saying he was old and no longer good. And then those same people are the ones who ride the US stock rally. Now, just one tariff from the US government has left buyers at the top with a bitter taste in their mouths. Meanwhile, Buffett became the biggest winner because he not only sold stocks at the highest price, but it is important to look at what he sold. It is what he sells. That shows the whole scenario of this game. What do I mean? Last year, many people wondered why Buffett sold his largest holding, Apple. And now can you see clearly which country the US has increased import taxes the most? This time it is China. But Apple's iPhones, laptops and headphones are mostly made in China. Right. That means if Apple wants to sell phones made in China to the US, it will have to pay sky-high taxes. Simply put, later on, if Americans want to buy phones designed by their own country, it will be more expensive than other countries. As a result, Apple shares plunged 35%. Now you see, not only did Buffett avoid the stock market crash, he even sold out before he took office. Stocks hit hardest by new tax policy. What does that mean? It shows that, no matter who becomes president, the script and outcome are already predetermined. Tariffs are just one of the tools used to fuel this crisis. So what is the end point of this crisis? You see this again. Buffett also sold shares of Bank of America, the second largest asset in his portfolio. What does that say? If Buffett's asset sales were just a coincidence, why have Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk also sold their company shares since last year? Is this also a coincidence? If all of this is a coincidence, then why is Li Ka-shing so eager to sell the port to raise cash this time? Many say he sold the port because of political risks. But is that really true? I tell you, the first round the American capitalists played interest rates and the second round they're playing is advertising taxes. Actually, the gameplay is still the same. Pump all the money from around the world into the US, causing the world economy and assets to collapse. Then those capitalists will slowly buy up the bottom. The difference is that interest is a way to suck up all the money in the world, while tariffs are a way to make the whole world suffer. What does it mean? The most important thing is how we should arrange ourselves in this second half. If you don't want to be a victim of the wealth situation and even hope to step up to a higher class, you can follow my channel, because I will continue to share more information with you later. And if you are afraid that you will forget after listening, meaning you have wasted your time, then you can like this video. This way, the video will automatically be in your playlist, so you can come back to it anytime and practice along. Then let's get straight to the point. What happened after the US raised taxes? First, the US stock market crashed right. Most people just see the stock market drop. But don't think about where all that money goes. How much money has the market crash of the past 2 days evaporated? $6.6 trillion there. What is evaporation? It just disappeared without a trace. So have you ever wondered why this $6.6 trillion could disappear from the stock market so suddenly? In the stock market, if there are losers, there must be winners, right? When the market falls, those who are holding stocks lose money. This means that those who buy at high prices will lose. On the contrary, those who sold at high prices and bought back at low prices, that is, short sellers, will make money. So who is holding the shares? Lately, everyone has seen it clearly. Is it the friends around you or yourself? Is the small investor? In the previous video, I said that currently, by conservative estimates, at least 80% of US stockholders are retail investors or foreign investors. In other words, $6.6 trillion has evaporated from the stock market, most of it from retail and foreign investors. In simpler terms, this money is transferred from the pockets of retail and foreign investors to the pockets of short sellers. So who is shorting the market? Who else besides the short-selling syndicates like Soros that I mentioned in the previous video? Who has inside knowledge about tariffs? Couldn't they have shorted it? First, right at the height of the crash, Trump tweeted that now was the best time to buy stocks. That is, he told everyone to take advantage of the market to buy at the bottom. Then, just hours later, he publicly announced that he would suspend the tariff policy for 90 days. As a result, the US stock market, which had been in free fall, immediately rebounded. It suddenly turned back on. What does this mean? Is the current US stock market's rise or fall dependent on a Trump reversal? Or is a policy change enough? Can you make money just by telling Trump when to buy and when to sell? Is it possible to have insider trading in there? If you have been following my channel, you must know what problems the US government is rushing to solve right now. First, they have no money left to spend. You can clearly see that the US National Treasury is almost empty. If the Treasury runs out of money, the government will have to shut down. Second, no one is buying US government bonds anymore. You can see, from 2021 onwards, US bonds were sold off in large volumes and continuously fell in price. Simply put, no one wants to lend money to America anymore. So how to solve the first problem? Treasury has no money to spend. It's simple. If the stock market can surge or plummet because of a Trump statement or policy, then the US stock market is no different from the government's ATM. As soon as the US Treasury runs out of money, it can deliberately cause market volatility. To make money, first, create a crisis, short sell, take the money and then push the market up again so that small investors, also known as greenhorns or F0 investors, continue to be lured in. The whole process of discounting must be quick, strong, but not too long, because if it falls too fast, small investors will die and the market cannot recover. You may find what I say absurd, but these are not my words, but Trump's own words. You can watch that video. Trump said his longtime friend was not counting the company, but himself in one day earned $2.5 billion. Does this mean that this market crash is not a way to transfer wealth from the hands of the people to the hands of capitalists and the US government? Now a lot of organizations say they're going to investigate the US government. I just laughed. As for the fact that no one wants to buy US bonds, how does the US government intend to solve it? I have said many times they want to actively cause a market crisis, to force money flow from the stock market to government bonds. They really want to do so. But whether they can do it or not, we will have to wait and see. When the news of the tax increase was released, US bonds did increase for 2 to 3 days. But those days were all high opening, low closing, very high trading volume. What does that mean? That is, it is true that there were a lot of people who rushed to buy US bonds at the beginning. But in the end all of them became the ones who carried the goods. Why is that? I've said it before. When no one buys bonds in auctions, Wall Street financial institutions are forced to step in and back them. So when there was a lot of money pouring into buying bonds to carry the goods, the Wall Street players who had to hold on to them before took this opportunity to sell off and withdraw from the market. Why is that? Because they are all stockpiling ammunition. That is, cash to prepare to buy at the bottom and rearrange their investment strategies. Furthermore, if the US government could solve the problem of inflation, the capitalists would lose control of America. So we see that although US bonds initially increased strongly, they all opened high and closed low. Most importantly, China and Japan are tacitly admitting that they are also dumping US bonds to counterattack because America punished them. They had to use American bonds to counter-punish them. So seriously, Trump's move from the stock market to US bonds is essentially a failure. Simply put, there are two reasons for the US's temporary suspension of tariff increases. First, it temporarily solved the problem of the US government having no more money to spend. But the US was hit back. So is this the end? Now a lot of people come back to watch the video we posted a month ago titled Finally. The only opportunity to get rich in a lifetime has arrived and leave comments saying that everything has come true completely. Is that true? I tell you, this round of tariffs is just a test testing the waters. Raising tariffs, like raising interest rates, is intended to blow up the global economy so that American capitalists can go buy assets everywhere. But the difference is that this tax hike became the trigger for the financial crisis. In other words, when interest rates rise, money from all over the world will flow into the US because the US has high interest rates. So the whole world has to sell assets and withdraw money to pour into the US. When every country sells its own assets and currencies to buy US dollars and assets, global assets and currencies will lose value. At this time, American capitalists will sell their assets that have increased in value. Then take those high-value dollars to travel around collecting goods when assets in other countries are sold off. This is how they harvested the whole world in the first half. The second part, which is tariffs, is like directly robbing money from your country. What do you mean? To put it simply, for example, today the US imposes taxes on Vietnamese goods. Previously, you sold a component for 10 dong. Now I add 4 dong in tax. What can you do? There are two options. First, if you want to keep your profit the same, you have to increase the price of the component from 10 cents to 14 cents. This means you have to sell your goods more expensively to pass on this tax burden to consumers. But when you increase your price, your product becomes expensive and fewer customers will buy it. Then your orders and sales will drop dramatically, forcing you to cut staff or even go bankrupt. This will lead to a wave of unemployment in Vietnam. People without money do not spend. And without spending, the Vietnamese economy will decline. When Vietnam's economy declines, the countries that cooperate with you are also affected and decline. When all of them can't earn dollars, the national treasuries of these countries will be depleted. Their currencies will lose value and exchange rates will plummet. That is the first choice. The second option is that the US imposes tariffs but you do not increase the price of your products. This means you have to bear the entire cost of the customs duty yourself. That means you sell a product for $10 but have to pay $4 in tax to the US. So how much profit do you have left? When there is no profit, you will lose and the outcome will be the same. Many businesses in Vietnam will not be able to continue operating and will also collapse, which will also lead to economic recession. When your economy is in recession, no one wants to invest in Vietnam anymore. People will exchange Vietnamese currency into US dollars. Then your money will also lose value. Another method is that many countries will actively let their currencies depreciate. For example, if the US imposes a 40% tax, but if your currency also depreciates by 40%, isn't that a trade-off? This approach may keep domestic companies in business. But if your currency depreciates by 40%, your national assets have actually become 40% cheaper. It's simple. The yen is losing value. Do you want to go to Japan because Japanese goods suddenly became cheaper? Simply put, no matter which way you choose, as long as you are taxed, your country will hardly earn any dollars. If you don't have money, the economy will be bad. When the economy is bad, national assets such as factories, businesses and resources will also be sold off at cheap prices. Most importantly, your currency will depreciate against the US dollar. By then, American capitalists could use the rising dollar to buy up everything from falling currencies to falling assets around the world. So, when the tariffs were imposed, it was true that US stocks crashed. But the reality is that the entire global stock market will collapse as well. So, even though the US is also affected, the US government is still determined to do this. Why? Because this is a winner-takes-all game. forcing the whole world to fall to the bottom in the short term. It is true that Americans will suffer a lot. Rising prices, inflation, poor economy lead to unemployment, market collapse. But this is not just an American problem. It is a world problem. The whole world will collapse economically because of tariffs. This is exactly like the 2008 financial crisis. But after the 2008 crisis, the US was the fastest recovering country in the world, even recovering stronger than before. Why? Because when the global economy collapses, global assets are sold off and American capitalists will buy them back at extremely cheap prices. In other words, although the US is at risk of recession as long as other countries are also in recession, the US is not actually in recession, because when others die more tragically, the world's money will return to invest in America, where it is less tragic. So tariffs or interest rate hikes are ways to drain US dollars from the world, causing global assets to sell off. But the difference is that tariffs could trigger a global financial crisis. Because this is nothing less than a war. Although the explosion point was in America, the people killed by the explosion were all over the world. Do you understand? Many people believe that Trump raised taxes because the whole world is making money from America. Because he wants to bring manufacturing back to America. I heard that funny. America only needs to play finance and print money to easily buy up all the resources and products made with sweat and tears of the whole world. And now you tell me you want Americans to go back to being farmers and workers. Are you willing? I tell you, history is repeating itself. A tax is a large-scale transfer of wealth. On the surface, these tariffs are imposed on other countries. But in reality they are imposed on ordinary people all over the world. Because people have to face all kinds of things. For example, if you do business or invest, your assets will depreciate. But if you do nothing but work hard, you will still have to face inflation. Prices are rising. The economy is in recession and currencies are losing value. All of this silently transfers your assets into the hands of American capitalists. So if you missed the first stage of arrangement, did not have time to exit at a high risk level and did not have much cash or defensive assets, then in the later stages you can still choose to remain indifferent, watching the capitalist world massacre and plunder, and then your assets evaporate. So what can we do? Capitalists like Buffett know and foresee more than we do. So they can plan ahead. But what advantage do small investors like us have over them? It's the flexibility. Buffett may need to prepare for a whole year to buy or sell assets. But we just need to wait until the cash flow is certain to flow in right. At the moment the stock price is about to push up. Then it is not too late to place an order. In other words, the trend is created by the big guys and we just need to follow the trend to make money and withdraw. And then there's the bottom line. Tariffs are also a bargaining chip the US government uses in international negotiations. If your country doesn't want to be taxed, you have to follow the US. Simply put, you have to buy US government bonds. If you resist, sorry, your national assets will be sold off cheaply to American capitalists. Because right now, whether it's Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg or us, we're all holding a large amount of cash waiting to go buy cheap goods. Therefore, this round of tariffs is just a test to see which countries will sink, which will float, who will protest and who will obediently buy US bonds. As a result, many countries, despite declaring they would protest, ended up selling US bonds, causing the value of US bonds to fall by 8%. The US dollar continues to depreciate and capital flows out of the US. This is also why, in previous videos, I always discouraged people from buying long-term US bonds. Late last year, I started exchanging US dollars for gold and Japanese yen. So when the global stock market crashed, investors around the world did not move money into the US but fled the US. What does this mean? That means the whole world, when faced with the choice between buying US bonds or facing a financial crisis, chose the financial crisis. In other words, this time the US's tariff hikes around the world may have reached a point of no return. Because now US stocks, US currency and US bonds are all falling. Saving stocks cannot save currencies. Saving currencies cannot save bonds. Most importantly, the Federal Reserve and professional capitalists did not come to the rescue. The reason? You should review my previous video. This is the point. If all three markets die beyond saving, The US government will have no choice but to rise from the fire. Simply put, trigger a financial crisis so that the whole world has to pay the consequences for them. So it's important to understand what stage we're in and why US stocks are falling so fast this time. It's simple. Today I bought an American stock for $100. Then it went up to $200. I want to continue buying more, but I have no money left. What to do? I took that $200 stock to the bank, put it up as collateral and borrowed $150. Then I used that $150 to buy more stocks. But because the US raised taxes and the market crashed, the bank asked me to pay back the $150 immediately. Otherwise, sell all my shares. If I don't want the stock to be sold, I'm forced to return the $150. But I don't have $150 in my hand. If there was, I wouldn't have borrowed from the bank. So I couldn't pay and the bank was forced to sell my shares. But if many people like me cannot pay their debts on time, a large amount of stocks will be dumped on the stock market without regard to price. It is for that reason that US stocks have collapsed this time. So if I don't want to see such a situation happen, I'm forced to sell other assets I'm holding. For example, European stocks, Japanese stocks, crude oil, Bitcoin, etc. I will sell all those assets to get cash. Then use the cash to pay off the bank loan. Simply put, it is selling assets to get money to pay back the bank. Because now everyone needs money, not goods. In simpler terms, when a bank asks you to repay a loan or make a margin call, it means that the bank is taking back the US dollars that they previously pumped into the market. And this will cause a crisis. Liquidity globally. There are many people selling assets, but very few people have the money to buy them back. So the property cannot be sold. And this may just be the beginning. To solve this liquidity crisis, it is necessary to bring money and assets in the market back into balance. The solution is very simple. I said it in a previous video. The only way is for the US Federal Reserve to step in, which means expanding its balance sheet and printing more money. But Fay has two choices. The first option is to intervene now, but keep interest rates as high as they are and pump money into the market. That means they won't let the US stock market crash too hard. They will print money to ensure the market has enough dollars to keep operating. But at the same time, the US government also has to pay very high interest rates. In this scenario, the stock market may recover slightly, but there will be no big boom and it may even recover and then continue to fall in the long term. The second option, which I think is more likely because both in 2008 and 2020 Fay chose this path, is to wait until the financial crisis or market crash becomes more serious before taking action. Then they will print unlimited money and use the newly printed money to lend to American capitalist corporations at 0% interest. This approach actually suits the interests of the capitalists behind Fay and the US government. Because, as I said, if the US government continues to use tariffs to trigger a global financial crisis, then as long as the global economy is worse than the US will become the best country, a safe haven for global capital flows during times of crisis. Then US bonds will have buyers again for the conglomerates behind the Fed. When the world collapses and global assets are dumped cheaply, they just need to turn on the printing press, borrow money at 0% interest and be able to collect all the cheap assets around the world. Thus, US stocks and global assets will return to the hands of US capitalist corporations. At the same time, the US also solved the problem of no one buying bonds. And the amount of interest to be paid also immediately decreased sharply thanks to 0% interest rates. So since last year, I've been thinking that triggering a financial crisis and then going back to 0% interest rates and expanding the balance sheet is a bigger possibility. And this is why Buffett sold shares of American banks. Because when the financial crisis happened, no one could pay their debts to the bank, causing the bank to immediately lose serious value. If you are an observant person, you must have realized when is the opportunity for us to enter the market and catch the bottom. First of all, that time is not now. Because stock prices and current asset classes can still skyrocket on just one word from the US government. Or the market will crash severely. If you enter the market now, the money you make will be just quick money. Not big money. The most important thing is that today you can make money. But tomorrow you may lose it again. Even when buying, You have to cut losses and stop losses regularly. So this is not the right time for short-term investments or travel wars. So we chose to hibernate temporarily. That means what we care about now is not which assets will increase in value, but which assets can help our assets not lose value. For that reason, we started converting dollars into gold and Japanese yen last year and are now determined to continue holding them for as long as possible. We have previously tried short-selling Tesla stock and the results are pretty good. But we emphasize that it is just a test. The real time to short is when the Federal Reserve or the US government uses tariffs to trigger a financial crisis that causes US stocks to collapse completely. At that time, we will sell short aggressively. And when FE starts to expand its balance sheet and release money, we will slowly follow the trend and catch the bottom. That's our big layout direction. At the same time, I also want to share that in 2008, many people were just construction workers or waiters in illegal restaurants. But now many of them have become rich seniors beside me. After 2008, the class began to become fixed. The people who used to serve now have nothing to do. The assets in their hands each month, even each hour, generate an amount of money that many people cannot earn in their entire lifetime. As for me, I was born late, was still young at that time and did not seize that opportunity. But this time the opportunity came and I grew up. The important thing is that if it really comes, I'm ready. I've rolled up my sleeves, and if this opportunity doesn't come, I won't lose anything, right? I just rearranged it from the beginning. So if you don't want to miss out on the upcoming market opportunity, what you need to do is prepare in advance. First, let's unify our views. Understand the thinking and investment methods that I share. Then make it your own. Don't wait until then to ask if you should go in now. Is this property still available? Now that you are stuck with capital and losing money, what should you do? Because once the opportunity passes, I don't know how many more years I have to wait. The situation is sure to become more volatile in the future. But due to time constraints, I will end here today. I share free knowledge on how to become rich, entrepreneur, investor and achieve financial freedom. If you don't want to miss it, subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell and share this video widely. I sincerely wish all of you who liked this video to achieve financial freedom soon. If you find just one or two helpful quotes in today's video that help you live a better life, I'll be satisfied.